It is important that anything in this podcast or any other content we produce is not misconstrued as medical advice. We cannot diagnose, prescribe, treat, or cure any animal. In order to do any of that, a veterinarian must see your pet in person to develop what is called the veterinarian client patient relationship, or VCPR.
What?
So, last week we talked about dogs, and this week we wanted to jump on cats, and specifically cat nutrition, because cat nutrition is like they're very different creatures, especially when you compare them to dogs. Like, they have entirely different dietary needs, and I think a lot of people think you kind of just feed a cat the same way you feed a dog, or you treat a cat the same way you treat a dog when it comes to really anything, food, treats. So, big thing is like the number one type of cat food still to this day is you feed your cat kibble, which is something that cats really shouldn't eat at all. But so the big thing with your cat is that they are an obligate carnivore. So if you want to explain more like what that's about.
Yeah. So first I just want to say, like, to drive home, I guess, what you just said about cats are not dogs. They're totally different. They're both considered carnivores, but really the similarities do end there. And like, even in vet school, all of my professors, all the doctors that are our professors, love to say all the time, cats are not small dogs, because we tend to think of them that way, like, oh, well, they're just small dogs. They're not. It really is true. So they do need to be treated differently. And I think we've said in some previous episodes that a lot of what we're saying really does apply to both dogs and cats. So I think kind of a good way to approach it is like, okay, here's like your, kind of blanket solutions that often it's like, this definitely applies to dogs and mostly applies to cats. But we're going to make this one just about cats to give you some of those major differences, the ones that are most important as far as you thinking about how to feed your cat. That's our goal here.
Yep. I think what's really important is, like, just thinking of your cat as an obligate carnivore is a good way to just think about their dietary needs. Even if you're like, I can't feed them 100% meat, right, or meat and like just give them like organs or whatever, like you can at least know their dietary needs by thinking of them as obligate carnivores, and that way you can really kind of move in the right direction of thinking of them as that. Yes.
Do you want me to expand on the
go
obligate
ahead.
Carnivore?
Yeah.
So to answer your original question now, so I said dogs and cats, they're both carnivores, but then the differences or the similarities end there and the differences begin. So an obligate carnivore, which is what cats are but dogs are not, means that they essentially have zero capacity to utilize carbohydrates as a form of metabolized energy, right? So as fuel for their body, just to function with their daily needs, or even if they're, I don't know, if hypothetically you were about to do some crazy cat workout, you still would not want to add carbohydrates prior or post that crazy cat workout. Because that's how different they are. They can't utilize them. Basically, you eat them and poop them out at best.
Yep.
And just to illustrate, I suppose, how dogs are different there, is that although they have no requirement for carbohydrates, they can utilize a small amount of carbohydrates. They have the enzyme and metabolic capacity to break down some plant material. Cats do not. So that's our big important kind of launch pad for really how you think about everything with feeding your cat.
Yep. And similar to dogs, if you were to feed your cat raw food, which is something we would recommend you try, there's a big concern when it comes to like the safety of cat food or raw food for both dogs and cats. But cats have amazing. They have their gut's pretty amazing when it comes to breaking down pathogens. It's highly acidic. Wouldn't worry about that issue too much. The bigger concern is the threat to yourself when it comes to feeding that. So to head on to like the most integral part of their diet, which you would think would be meat or protein, it's actually water, because nothing, mammals can't survive without water. And cats specifically, they don't get water the way you think. Your cat may drink water. They're never going to drink enough water out of a bowl. Their food, since their ancestors are desert-dwelling cats, they're designed to get water from prey, and that's the majority of their water in their diet will come from their prey. Even if you feed them like just raw food, or our cats,
or gently cooked,
something like that, or
really
even canned food. Yep.
Yeah.
Even like canned food, but our cats eat raw food, and they barely drink water at all. And at first, it's kind of weird, because you're like, and not me, like she knew obviously more than I did about that at the time, but like it's kind of concerning when your cats never drink water. But that's what should happen. So, do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah. So I'll expound on the desert ancestry bit a little here. So cats they're actually not. It depends on who you ask, but generally, cats aren't even considered a domesticated species like dogs. Also depends on who you ask, but generally dogs are considered at least a domesticated subspecies of the gray wolf. Cats generally are not considered a domesticated species. And it is a little bit of a mystery, the exact ancestry of, what we consider domestic cats, which I think is cool. But we do know they originated from desert, small desert cats. And what that means, and you see this in all desert mammals, is, of course, we all think desert, lacking water, right? So when there's not available water to drink, like Jesse said, you have to get it from your diet. And how the body specifically, or at least the major adaptation that the body has to deal with that, is in their kidneys. So what we all have in our kidneys, the functional unit is called the nephron, and it's made up of all these little microscopic tubules, and that's where your pee is made. Mm-hmm. So you go from essentially blood and excess water and the waste products that are in your blood. They go into the nephrons and all these little tubules, and it turns into pee by the time it comes out the other end. And there is if you Google a picture of a nephron, they look kind of fun. It looks like it would be a really cool roller coaster, I think. Yeah. But there's a part of it called the loop of Henle, and it kind of drops down from the outer, if you were to slice your kidney in half, you're kind of looking at the outer portion, and then there's sort of an inner portion. And that loop of Henle drops down into the inner portion. And in order to conserve water, desert mammals have these super long loops of Henle that drop way down in there, and the details are fascinating and incredibly complicated, so I am not going to go there. But by doing that, it then gives the body that extra length of tubule, this loop of Henle. It allows the body to suck extra water back out of what is on its way to becoming urine. Mm-hmm. So it sucks it back out, back into the bloodstream, and that's how they go about conserving water when they're not able to drink water, because they're just beautifully designed to really not have to drink water. So there's that. That's their desert ancestry. And along with that means they just naturally have next to no thirst drive. Mm-hmm. And along with that, it means if they're eating kibble, a dog has a decent capacity to drink a whole bunch of water if they're being fed this dry food. Your average kibble has approximately 10% moisture content versus your average, whole prey item or canned food or raw food or gently cooked food has approximately 70 or 75% moisture content. So huge difference, obviously. And so while a dog has some capacity to make up for that in saying, okay, I'm thirsty now because I'm eating all this dry stuff, just like you or I would, right? We eat a bunch of salty, dry food. We feel thirsty. We drink. Cats just don't have that. And it goes back to their kidney function, which then communicates with their brain, essentially, and tells them, no, you don't really need to drink water. So when you do feed them kibble, they'll drink a little more water, but in order to actually make up the difference, one little cat would have to be drinking over a cup of water a day just to, like, barely break even, purely from a moisture content.
Hydrated.
Yeah, and that's even hypothetical. Like, in reality, it would probably take even more than that. And think about it, it's like, oh, it's 1 cup of water. Well, how much water have you ever seen your cat drink? Like, no cat can drink. I mean, most cats can't drink half of that, even in a day. It's just, they're not designed to do that. So,
and also
therein lies our huge kibble problem.
Yeah, long-term dehydration is actually a big problem for cats too. It's a major stress on their kidneys, and kidney disease is a huge issue in cats. It's one of the most common issues in cats. A lot of it's also related to overfeeding in general and the food that they eat, but so, like, what is it about the constant dehydration that stresses their kidneys, and what is the long-term implications of that type of kidney disease?
Yeah. So the details get pretty complex, but
you can give us like I'm 5. Tell me like if I'm like an 8th grade student, tell me like.
So again, back to them being desert creatures. I hope I didn't give too confusing of an explanation of the kidney function, but because of that and that lack of moisture coming in, the kidneys can't compensate, and you just end up with the entire body in this state of chronic dehydration, and over time the kidneys, essentially, you get scar tissue in your kidneys. Like, if we're doing if we're on like the anatomy lab floor and we're looking at kidneys from chronic renal failure, and they all look the same across any species. However, unfortunately, this is incredibly common in cats. It's pretty much any older cat that has passed away. If you look at their kidneys, you kind of expect to see this type of damage, and they're like these shriveled, scarred down, like sad. They should be like this really bright red, like kidney bean-ish like type red is what a healthy kidney looks like, even a little more red than that. And these kidneys look like whitish, yellowish, grayish, and horrible and sad. Like, they just look completely dead, and for all intents and purposes, they do essentially die within the cat while they're still alive, because they eventually just have no ability to function. And obviously that's not good.
Yeah. And
then that is related to many other problems, but even aside from the kidney itself, dehydration, we all know, drink more water.
Yeah.
We all know no one really drinks enough water, and we all know that water is important for everything. We can't go more than a couple days without water. We can go months without food. I mean, I don't know if I could, but
that'd be hard.
Yeah, technically. But it's just totally different with water, because that's how important water is. So when you're living your life in a state of chronic dehydration, it's incredible that cats can live to be 15 years old even. And they should live to be 20 plus, but a cat eating kibble its whole life living to be 15 is
I was just going to say
really shocking if you look at the damage it causes.
Over the years, how like cats used to live to be into their 20s, and it's been fairly recently too. That's since the invention of processed cat foods that we've literally like.
Which is kind of a post-World War II
Yeah,
invention
yeah.
for the most part.
So yeah, we've like significantly hindered our cats' abilities to thrive by feeding them what crap essentially. So, all right, so water's super important. That's number one, I would say. Number two is protein, because cats, being obligate carnivores, like they have to meet a certain threshold of protein. They can, a lot of times with processed foods, they cannot compensate for the amount of protein they need. They have to, they know, they're instinctually going to know they need to eat a certain amount of protein to feel satiated. So when it comes to eating like a kibble, they'll just eat more and more and more, and they'll never actually reach that amount. And it also, the more kibble they eat, it actually spikes their insulin levels, so they feel more hungry. And it's really like sad, because if you were to see the statistics, they say like 60% of cats are overweight. I'm sure it's higher than that, but that's a big reason why. So protein, it's obviously not where they get most of their energy from. So, but what is it about protein that's just the most important part of their diet?
So if we go back to
desert?
Yeah, back to the desert. We're spending a lot of time in the desert today. Yeah. But just back to wild cats, any wild cat, right? They kill things and eat them.
Mm-hmm.
So
they like to murder things.
Yeah, that's why we love cats, really, because they're little serial killers that we get to keep in our homes, and they're so fuzzy and cute and evil simultaneously, and we somehow really love them for it. Anyway, so in these wild prey items we kind of talked about, there's a lot of moisture in there. There's approximately a 2-to-1 ratio of moisture to other stuff in your average wild prey item. There's also mostly protein, right? All that muscle meat is protein. There's also some fat, but a major difference that we do have to think about when, like, if we're making a homemade cat food or really just assessing any type of commercial cat food, this is one that definitely applies to dogs as well, is wild animals don't have much fat on them. And it's often a different type of fat than what you'll find on farm-raised meat.
A steak or something. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's much less fat, and then what happens is when we have animals raised in captivity, they're being fed mostly corn-based products, and a lot of things happen, but there's a whole bunch of inflammation created from that food within this prey animal, or, the animal being raised, and they are also going to become fat, have lots of fat stores that is unnatural, which stores within it lots of yucky stuff that then just creates more inflammation in the body when you eat it. So, and this is an interesting one because cats do beautifully processing fat. Fat is really how cats get a lot of their energy requirements, which, let's also keep in mind that most domestic cats are extremely sedentary. This, depends on where you live and your lifestyle and everything, but especially here in the United States, most people, especially in, suburban or urban settings, keep their cats indoors 24/7. They do not go outside, and to make up for not running around and being goofy, playful things outside and hunting and killing things outside, all those things that takes a lot of energy, you would have to play with your cat probably a heck of a lot more than you do, and no judgment. I mean, who has hours a day to be playing with their cat? So something to think about there too, where just energy requirements and fat requirements are a lot lower for an indoor pet cat.
I want to just throw this in there too. When it comes to protein, they need animal-based protein. They can't do anything with plant-based proteins. So a lot of times they'll put they'll put like certain grains and stuff in the food as a way to supplement the protein.
Wheat gluten.
Yeah, well, they'll use corn, right? They'll use corn gluten, rice, stuff like that. Their cat can't do anything with those. Like that doesn't help them at all. So a plant-based protein is just more added health problems down the road is really what it comes down to. So protein, super important. Now you mentioned briefly fat. Are we good with protein? Want to move on to fat?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
all
so
right.
you hit the important
All
ones
right.
of protein, yeah.
So fat is where your cat gets their energy from. So, dogs and humans can break down plant sugars and stuff like that for the most part into the glucose they need for energy. And your cat gets that energy from eating fat, triglycerides. And
triglycerides are like when you eat fat, one of the stages it's broken down into is triglycerides, and that is the stage that is really used as energy or can be broken down once more in your liver to be stored as energy that can then be released later.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of your core molecule when fat is broken down. So that's why that's the important one.
So when it comes to fat, though, too, is there too much fat? Can your cat get too much fat in their diet?
So, yes and no, honestly.
Yeah.
So I kind of already talked about like indoor sedentary lifestyle. Don't actually need a ton of fat because they don't need a ton of excess energy, and then also the issues with eating fat from these corn-fed animals, which is just any pet food you're buying, like any commercial pet food, with very rare exceptions, you have to assume that's the type of animal that it's coming from, corn-fed, whatever it is, chicken, turkey, cow, pig, and so yeah, I guess that would be they can have kind of quote unquote too much, but then the flip side is where I say like no, they almost can't have too much, and of course you can have too much of anything, but within reason, because they can metabolize it so well, and because that is sort of their sole source of energy, it's hard for them to have too much. And specifically what I mean by too much is you eat so much fat that it is then stored as fat cells within your bodies. That within your body, you don't have multiple bodies. Yeah. So within the cat's bodies. Yeah. So that's just, it's not really how it works in cats, and that's the whole, or part of the whole being an obligate carnivore thing that is unique.
So if you feed your cat a ton of fat, is it going to be a psycho then?
No. That's also not how that works.
Basically,
basically, if they have more fat than they need, they poop it out.
Okay.
That's really the moral of the story.
Like running around your apartment, tearing the walls off and stuff, right?
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. If they're not doing that already, the fat in their diet is not going to affect that. Certainly not drastically.
Okay. All right. So this is the probably like those are the major dietary needs is water, protein, fat. That's really all they need. And
a distinct lack of carbohydrates.
Right, so that's the thing I'm going to do next year is of utmost importance to the whole diet thing, even though those other needs are paramount, is you should really like no carbs for your cat. In the last, I don't know, since World War II, let's just say, the rise of chronic disease in cats has been crazy high. It has been astronomical. number of cases for chronic disease, things like diabetes. Like cats don't naturally get diabetes. It is not something that a cat in the wild will ever get unless they, I don't know, they live in a Friskies factory or something, and nobody knows they're there. Like live under it or something. But which I guess you're not in the wild then, anyways. But you're never gonna just see, a cat in the wilderness getting diabetes, and overwhelmingly cats, like I said earlier, are overweight, if not obese. And I know there's a thing, lots of people think fat cats are cute and all this stuff. Fat cats are not happy cats at all. They're really not. And they, your cat should be, this is kind of a small aside here, but your cat should be, even if your cat's like 10 years old, they should still be active and playing and stuff. A lot of people think when you have once your cat becomes an adult, they no longer should play. It's just like they sleep all day, they get fat. It's just not. The cat should have enough energy and feel good enough to want to like get the zoomies and tear around your house, no matter how old they are.
I mean, our cats do every single day.
Yep.
Multiple times a day.
Usually at night though, when we're trying to sleep. Sometimes. So
no crazy middle of the night though. They're good.
Yeah, just a few hours. So, but when it comes to this, it's like the big culprit behind all these changes in cats is carbohydrates. And kibble food is the most popular type of food on the market. It's the cheapest food for most people. I don't judge anybody for feeding that because it's cost effective and affordable, and you need to feed your cat, and like we love our cats. So yeah.
And we do live in this thing called the real world over
right,
here.
Right.
We understand that,
Yep.
We're presenting you with the ideal case scenario and things to try to move the bar towards, right? And then everyone's got to do what they've got to do, You have to do what's reasonable and doable for you within that. And just we want to give you an idea of what direction you can move towards, see maybe something you can improve.
Yep. So my point being though is that's absolutely true. No, I'm saying I don't judge because I get it. But a big culprit with issues in cats is kibble, cat food, and reason being you can't make kibble without carbs. It's impossible. And your cat can't do anything with them. But like if you were to get I guess you could get a bag, they could try to make a kibble without carbs and you were to get a bag of dust. It just wouldn't be anything there. It'd be like a dehydrated food then essentially, but with no nutritional value. So that's just all the foods on the market now. You can look for kibble that are some that are way better than others. They're still going to have carbs in it though. Maybe consider feeding a canned food even if you can, because the canned food will have the water, the protein, the fat. A lot of them still have carbs, but you can try to find some that don't. They do exist out there.
And they generally have less carbs than a kibble.
Yeah.
Pretty much no matter what.
Yep.
So it's still a step in the right direction, right?
Yep. So when it comes to the whole carb thing with cats, like what happens when your cat eats carbs?
Everything bad. So essentially, first of all, your cats don't have amylase in their saliva, which is the digestive enzyme that breaks down carbohydrates. We have amylase in our saliva. Dogs have like a teeny tiny bit, but cats appear to have zero or next to zero because they really produce in their whole body no amylase or a very, very minimal amount. So again, just back to they don't have that capacity to break down carbohydrates. So sort of the first step towards chronic disease that happens as these carbohydrates are moving through the gut that again just can't be digested. The sugar, we're going to say sugar because all carbohydrates are sugar, right? No matter what. As they move through the gut, it is like it's mechanically irritating to the gut. And also is chemically causing inflammation within the gut. And what happens is you get leaky gut, just like that's such a big term for humans now, probably for the last like decade. And it's the exact same thing happens in our pets, and it's like extra true of cats because they're obligate carnivores and really can't break down carbohydrates, period. And then that in turn leads to all of this. It's kind of like this disastrous cascade of chronic disease.
Mm-hmm.
So without getting into all the specifics, yeah.
So yeah, that's a big one. Like I've from what I understand, like you said, they just don't have the mechanisms to break it down. And there's a thing too out there when it comes to like weight loss cat foods where they try to make it really high fiber, thinking that's somehow going to solve the issue. Cats, that's just actually causes more nutrition deficiencies. I'm not going to call out any names here, but there are some big brands that usually get, veterinarians tend to recommend them that have a weight control food that it's extremely high fiber based off this old school idea that somehow helps your cat lose weight. Like that fiber just doesn't do anything for them, and it just literally depletes the nutrients that they're getting from anything. And then when it comes to carbohydrates too, this is probably a topic for another day type of thing when I talk about dental health. But there's also a myth surrounding, you may hear your vet say, you need to feed your cat a kibble because it cleans their teeth. Like that somehow they eat this hard kibble, and while crunching it up, it's going to scrape their teeth clean. Well, that's not how cats eat. Cats have little pointy teeth that are meant for ripping and tearing. So when they bite into a piece of kibble, that's why you ever hear them like chew kibble, and it's super, you can hear it throughout the whole house. It's because they're popping it into a bunch of little pieces and then basically inhaling it. So that does nothing. And plus, if you eat a whole bunch of carbohydrates yourself and you don't ever brush your teeth, if you drink, pure sugar all day, whatever in your drink, like
if you eat dessert, just imagine, like if let's say, I don't know, you're at a birthday party, you eat a piece of cake. How do your teeth feel afterwards?
Yeah.
Disgusting and fuzzy, and you want to go brush them immediately.
Imagine never brushing your teeth. So that the idea that somehow eating a carbohydrate-laden diet is going to clean your teeth is absurd. It's this old school thinking. But when it comes to carbohydrates, is there anything else you wanted to add about it, or just we could even do a whole freaking show on carbohydrates in cats and dogs.
Yeah, I feel like I say this about everything, but we could go on forever. We could do a whole show on it, but we're
just starting out.
Leave it at that.
We'll get there someday. So big thing we got. We'll wrap it up here. We talked about how your cat's an obligate carnivore. You need to try to find as much of a protein and fat heavy diet as you can get them, even if that is a kibble. It's better. Trying to find a kibble that's better than others. Water is the ultimate. We need, every mammal needs water. That is the most important part for them being obligate carnivores. One of the most important aspects of it is to get the water they need, and chronic dehydration can cause long-term health complications. Then high protein, high fat. That's the only thing your cat can actually do anything with when they eat it. And then just try to lay off the carbs. I mean, any carbs. Like even if you can't afford to change food and you feed them like crappy, you feed them like little cheap treats, right? Just cut those out of their diet. You can even give them
little chunks of chicken. You know?
Yeah. You can even, or if you have a dehydrator, cut up a cow liver and dehydrate it, and that's a good way to cut back on the carbs as much as you can, because like I said, if your cat's overweight, it's not going to be as happy, and he or she their cat just won't live as long by being chronically over.
Be in pain while they are alive. They just hide it. Yeah. It's just the reality, and it's really depressing to say that.
And so by doing this, we want to help everybody get their cat and dog to an ideal weight and healthy. That's the whole point of what we're doing. We believe that through diet you can do that. that's the push when it comes to getting people to cut back on carbohydrates, because it's a very simple fix to a problem that most cat owners deal with. So we'll wrap it there. Do you want to add anything else?
Of course I do, but let's wrap it there. I think we got the important stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna call it a week, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. We'd love your feedback on what you think of the podcast, even the formatting of it. For example, if you prefer a longer or a shorter podcast, let us know. We genuinely want to be as helpful as possible for our listeners. And of course, share this with your friends and family so that we can help their pets live their healthiest lives possible. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, and we post a video version on the major video streaming platforms. Wishing you and your furry family members good health. Bye for now.